Welcome to the DrRcraft CSS custom fonts tutorial. By default, only fonts that are already installed on the user's computer can be used with CSS. However, CSS font face rules can be used to specify fonts to be used on the page, which don't need to be pre-installed and only load when the user visits. Let's learn how we can make our own font face rules. Firstly, to define a font, we use the font face at rule. The font face at rule takes a few properties. The first one being SRC, short for source. First, we can check if the font is already installed by using the local function, and then typing the name of the font inside the string. For example, and then we can add a comma to add a fallback if it's not installed. And then we can define a downloadable font using the URL function, and then paste the URL of the font. After the URL, to support older browsers, we'll have to add one other function at the end. It's the format function. And then you have to look at the file extension of the font and then specify the format name of the file extension. For example, this is .ttf, so I will write true type. Some other formats include OTF, which is open type, WOFF, which is just WOFF, and WOFF2, which is the same. The reason why font face rules are useful is so that we are not limited to just web safe fonts like serif and sans serif fonts that are already installed, and we can specify our own custom ones. The second and final CSS property that the font face rule takes is the font family property, which we use to set the name of the font that we're going to use later in the CSS code. In this case, I'm just going to name it whatever the local font is named here. So, Bitstream Vera Serif Bold. Finally, let's try applying the font. To apply the font, we just create another rule for the element that we want to apply the font to. In this case, I'm just going to apply the font to the entire body element, and then we can set the font family property, and then we can set the font family name to the same thing that we defined it as. So we can just copy and paste the font name, and now all of the text in the body is now using our font. Next, let's look at how we can import and use fonts from Google's collection. When you go to http://fonts.google.com, you'll find a collection of fonts that are free to use from Google. You can go explore and find one that you want. I'm just going to select the first one at the top, and it'll take you to a page where you can get the font, and then you can click on Get Embed Code, and then copy the embed code in the head of your HTML down here. Once we've copied the code from Google, we can just paste it in the head element of our HTML directly, and then go to our CSS and then change the font family property of the elements we want to change the font in, and change it to the name of the new Google font. And now you can see the Google font is now being used. However, it's always suggested to add a fallback font using a comma, so that if for some reason the custom font doesn't load, it can fall back to one that's installed on your computer. This concludes the CSS custom fonts tutorial. Thank you very much for watching.